Normally, dangers in these waters are moderate so close to the coast. Our greatest worry when fishing in the spot would be the occasional ever so curious Olaka, thinking they need to secure parts of our catch for themselves. Our little sailing boat shouldn't normally attract much attention, if you get your work done quickly enough. Sometimes it was checked out by a whale, but they pose no danger when left alone. With that, we just minded our own business, like always, throwing out our nets and waiting. Me, my longtime friend Sharuk and the brothers Michar and Kachar were just about to haul in today's catch, as we suddenly heard something hitting and scraping against the underside of our vessel. We immediately knew it must have been something big, since it made our boat shake dangerously. Sharuk looked at me with a surprised and clueless expression. "Whales normally don't come this close, right?" he asked with a hint of uncertainty. At first glance we all thought it must have been a whale. I leaned out and looked down at the water. Everything seemed normal, until I saw an obscure shadow emerging from the depths. Judging by its size, it had to be a large whale, but its shape didn't quite look like one. Just as I was about to turn around to the others again, the monster breached. Out of anything you could face here, we least expected to see an Unokteran. The ocean dragon's massive blocky head pierced through the surface right next to our vessel. The head alone was more than 2 spans long, almost half the length of the boat. Its body followed as it jumped out of the water. It dropped back in again and dived down, staring up massive waves extremely close to the vessel. Miraculously, it didn't capsize, but Michar lost his balance and fell into the water. The monster came back up again. Kachar reached out a hand towards his brother as the creature's massive head emerged right in front of them. It opened its jaws and let out a deep bellow reverberating in our chests. The brothers had no chance. It moved directly towards them and jumped down, at the same time clamping its jaws around the hull. I soon realized this wasn't just any Unokteran. This was him, Rah'Unok. We had heard of him, though he wasn't seen in the area, until now. I looked in the face of the one-eyed bull, saw the remains of a harpoon stuck where his right eye should have been. I saw the 2 other harpoons stuck in the skin on the back of his neck. Saw as many scars from countless moons worth of fighting. For a moment, I was struck by awe. But reality caught up to me and Sharuk as we heard the sound of wood cracking under the force of Rah'Unok's jaws. His bite nearly split our vessel in half. He dived once again, caught in his mouth a part of our boat and the 2 brothers. I could only imagine their grim fate. A large Unokteran can effortlessly swallow a man whole and alive if they aren't crushed between its jaws. Me and my friend had fallen into the water ourselves by now, and all we could do was trying to get away as quickly as possible. An Unokteran can swim faster than a man. Sharuk and I had to use our brief chance of escape as long as Rah'Unok was distracted, but we had no idea when and where he would emerge again. I, holding to one of the planks scattered across the water, moved away from the remains of our vessel as quickly as possible. Sharuk a few spans behind. I can't really tell what happened during the next few moments and why I'm still alive. The water around me was vibrating from a deep rumble. I turned around, and Rah'Unok was floating at the surface. He had his mouth closed, and Sharuk, he wasn't even half as tall as the creature's jaws were long, was somehow stuck in between its jaws with his upper body hanging out. Rah'Unok looked down at him, with his remaining gleaming orange eye, as if he was finding satisfaction in this. Sharuk was alive, and he desperately screamed at the creature to let him go, while driving a dagger into the monster's thick hide. A futile attempt of defense, just as the harpoons stuck in Rah'Unok's body once were. There wasn't much to be heard of his sounds, but I could certainly feel them as I moved away, trying to get as much distance between myself and the creature. I knew Rah'Unok was toying with Charuk, and I felt horrible for leaving him behind, but there was nothing I could do about it. Maybe 30 spans further away, I looked behind me for once more, and I only saw Rah'Unok diving down once again, dragging Charuk into the depths. The gods must have been merciful on me, because I have no idea why I was spared. Out of all the large apex predators of Karun's oceans, the Unokteran is likely the most infamous one, next to the megalodon. Them being so widespread throughout the planet's oceans led to encounters with many coastal tribes. Unokteran generally mind their own business and aren't inherently dangerous to humans. They see no reason in attacking the wooden vessels humans travel in, since those aren't viable prey. Normally, conflict only arises when an Unokteran sees an easy meal in the catches of fishers and especially whalers, who are probably the most wary of the species. But other than that, the Unokteran and humans coexist, with deadly encounters being rare. But there have been exceptions. Aside from the stories of whalers, these cases have been the most influential to the perception of the great ocean dragon. After all, many peoples of Karun had to acknowledge that Unokteran can be incredibly vengeful. Hurt them once, and they will remember. In this video, I want to introduce one such case, which probably influenced the perception of the species more than any other. An individual that still spreads terror along the coasts of southern Arum after decades. The great ruler of the waves, Rah'Unok. Thalassospinus giganteus surpasses the standards of Earth's theropods by a considerable margin. Unokteran, which is the name assigned to them by the Masuk, the first people trying to formally study and classify the species living in and around southern Arum, is best translated as ocean dragon. They have many names, but this is the most widespread one, so we will go with it. It is the largest theropod species to evolve so far. Most of the time, cows are substantially smaller than bulls, generally ranging between 33 to 39 metric tons, while bulls usually reach between 48 to 60 metric tons. But as with many species, there are exceptions to the rule. Not only in size, but also in overall lifespan. The average Thalassospinus lives for 70 to 80 years, if it escapes predation at a younger age. Normally, Unokteran grow the fastest in their first 12 years, which is around the time they reach sexual maturity. They continue to grow before reaching skeletal maturity between 30 and 40. Males do so later than females. After reaching skeletal maturity, which means they are close to full size, they do not completely cease growing, but their growth rate slows down substantially and nearly plateaus at this age. It seems like there's a correlation between the size of exceptionally large individuals and their age. While most Thalassospinus slow down in the 70s, some live long past this age, and those are usually considerably larger. This is likely determined by a variety of factors, but most importantly, the availability of food in the years before skeletal maturity and genetics. Rah'Unok is the name of one specific individual out of these especially large ones. It is not the first time in history a bull has been recorded to exceed the 21 to 24 meters average. Bulls of around 25 to 26 meters have been documented throughout centuries. Not only bulls, of course, cows are also known to sometimes exceed the 20 meters average. Taranaha, the grandmother dragon for example, was a female Unokteran living in the same area Rah'Unok does nowadays. She is said to have lived for 110 years and reached 24 meters at 59 metric tons, rivaling the average bulls. The largest individual ever, referred to as a Kubaharu by the tribes, surpassed even Rah'Unok. This bull reached 29 meters, almost 100 feet in length, at a staggering weight of 84 tons, compared to the average 60. Rah'Unok, now around a century in age, is 27.5 meters or 90.2 feet long at 72 metric tons. But size isn't what gave him his reputation. Instead, it is his relentlessness when it comes to fighting humans. Rah'Unok's behavior is highly unusual for Thalassispinos. Not only does he attack whalers for their catches, no, he even goes after small sailing boats close to the coast and attacks fishermen from small coastal villages who only try to make a living for their families. Neither Terran Naha nor Kubaharu had a reputation for engaging in such a behavior. Furthermore, it seems like Rah'Unok takes some kind of satisfaction from this. Rah'Unok was born approximately around the Earth year 1925. Little disclaimer here, I haven't come up with a calendar system yet, so whenever I name a specific year, I mean the Earth year. Furthermore, all of this still takes place in 2025 because I just started this project and can't move on with the years now. So we are in Earth year 2025 and Rah'Unok is therefore pretty much a century old. Kubaharu died 5 years before Rah'Unok was born. He lived to the age of 150 years, being born around 1770. With that he doubled the average lifespan of an Unokteran, and to this day he is assumed to be the oldest individual ever. This can't be said with 100% certainty though. There have been alleged instances of other Thalassispinos bulls approaching 30 meters reported from the northern hemisphere, which is where the species originated from. But these could not be verified so far. A lot of this region still is uncharted territory. But if true, these individuals must at least be of a similar age or even older than a Kubaharu. The estimates for the southern record holders Rah'Unok and a Kubaharu are more reliable, since Masuk naturalists thoroughly studied the species for a few decades now. With a Kubaharu, it is a more difficult question, since there isn't much left of him. In 1920, his body was washed up at the coast of eastern Arum near a city named Diatana. The local people, known as the Araimi, viewed the Unokteran as messengers of the ocean gods, so the species played an important role in their religion and was worshipped extensively. The skull of a Kubaharu was kept in a temple until Earth year 1952. It is the only part of a Kubaharu documented in detail. Unfortunately, these remains were destroyed during the Masuk people's violent colonization campaign in southeastern Arum. The strictly monotheistic Masuk sought to erase the Araimi's religion they viewed as primitive. Their soldiers raided settlements, destroyed temples, and murdered a lot of the Araimi's priests in the name of the god Haraketh. And they did not stop at the temple of a Kubaharu. His remains were lost, but the size of the skull is reliably documented at 4.2 meters in length, from which Masuk naturalists later estimated the animal's total length. Some suggest Rah'Unok might even be a son of a Kubaharu, but this isn't possible, since a Kubaharu died 5 years prior to Rah'Unok's birth. But it might be very well possible that Rah'Unok is a descendant of him. A Kubaharu was likely the oldest individual ever, but even if not, doubling the species' average lifespan is still more than impressive. It means that a Kubaharu first of all must have been born and grew up in times of plenty, so that the availability of food even allowed him to reach a weight far above average before skeletal maturity. Unokteran are generally robust and resilient animals, but usually old injuries and worn-down joints take their toll after 7 to 8 decades. Their prey, consisting of large animals, is dangerous and often fights back. Confrontation between rivals usually isn't lethal, but violent nonetheless, and certainly plays into the aging process. Old Unokteran become more vulnerable towards disease, worn-down joints and arthritis might eventually impair their hunting abilities, and sometimes they eventually become too weak to even surface regularly. This might result in Unokteran moving into shallow waters, where they end up beaching themselves with the changing tides. An Unokteran's death is often painful and drawn out, but afterwards it offers to many species a new source of life. As the equivalent to a whale fall, it plays an important ecological role. And yet, some Unokteran seem to overcome the process of aging for a long time. They live through injury and disease, and their body does not slow down yet, their joints and their muscles take much longer to wear down. This can't really be explained, but genetics likely play a major role. Rah'Unok still is far younger than Akubaharu was at the time of his death, but he already outlived a lot of the other bulls from his generation. And he is in surprisingly good condition. Whether he makes it through another 50 years or even surpasses Akubaharu remains to be seen. For now, Rah'Unok will continue to spread fear. Like already mentioned, Rah'Unok is notorious for actively going after humans. He was born south of Karun and lives in an area of major economic importance. Furthermore, the passage between the region's largest cities, Cayman and Hatak, the Masuk Empire's two capitals, is located in the area. Therefore, encounters between humans and Thalassospinus are more likely. Rah'Unok left his pod at the age of 12, like most Unokteran bulls do when reaching sexual maturity. He was already more massive than the others of his age. He and a few other adolescent bulls formed a loose alliance, which also isn't uncommon for the species, and Rah'Unok became the leader. They lived in an area rich in large prey, especially the haju, an abundant species of filter-feeding mosasaur, but also whales and large fish. Rah'Unok left his companions after a few years. For a while, he simply coexisted with the humans, but one day, everything changed. Rah'Unok was curious and naturally inquisitive around boats. A bigger whaling boat especially attracted his attention once. At the age of 20, with a length of 19 meters and a weight of 23 tons, he was far from fully grown. Female Unokteran were avoided due to their more social nature, but sometimes lone adolescent Thalassospinus bulls were also hunted by whalers. And this happened to Rah'Unok as he came too close. He survived and escaped. Afterwards, his entire perspective on humans changed. He didn't view them simply as his neighbors anymore, they became the target of his revenge. Unokteran that attack for easy prey and are hurt in the process behave differently from Unokteran that are actively hunted. Thalassospinus have an astonishing capacity to hold grudges, and their exceptional memory intensifies this. Rah'Unok, still growing up and not an adult yet, memorized humans as a source of pain and as a rival. He moved away from the waters around the Cayman-Hatak passage. This reaction of running away might seem surprising after everything discussed so far, but one has to keep in mind that Unokteran, while vengeful, aren't stupid. This is a highly intelligent species after all, and Rah'Unok decided it would be better to avoid humans as long as their weapons could pierce his skin. At the age of 35, Rah'Unok was already as large as a fully grown average bull at a length of 23 meters. He hasn't reached skeletal maturity yet, and would gain another 4.5 meters in length during the following years. Normally, an Unokteran bull's growth plateaus at around 40, but Rah'Unok got even 2 more years on top of that. Some Thalassospinus seem to take longer before the growth plateaus, which again seems to happen especially in individuals with greater lifespans. He was stronger than the others of his kind, and became dominant over many others of his age. Now he started to return the favor and attack the vessels crossing his path. And he did so unusually often. More and more reports of the same Thalassospinus bull were made. A large dominant male, notorious for not only driving other bulls away from the area when he meets them, but also terrorizing all kinds of vessels. Even the smaller boats, no Thalassospinus would normally bother with. Paired with a more than average size, Rah'Unok gained quite the reputation. A first true attempt of hunting him down was made in Earth year 1980, but it failed catastrophically. Rah'Unok lost his right eye, which worsened his perception of humans. Now, humans truly were his personal enemy. Rivalries between Thalassospinus can last for decades, since they memorize each other. In Rah'Unok's case, the rival wasn't an Unokteran, but rather anything he associated with humans. And unfortunately for them, he lacks the capacity to understand that not all of them were the same. They became his personal rivals, and the loss of one eye wouldn't stop him from eliminating these rivals. Rah'Unok was now 55 years old. 2 decades followed, and he normally should have reached his peak, but the bull didn't slow down. He lived past the age of 80, past the age of 90, and was moving closer to 100. At first, a few other attempts were made to kill him, but Rah'Unok never failed for the attempts of chasing him into shallow waters to beach him, since harpoons and spears never managed to lethally injure him. The problem about this approach also was that he studied his enemy's tactics during that time and stopped engaging in battles close to the coast. Thalassospinus' learning behavior still wasn't understood at the time. Eventually, the Massuk government intervened and put an end to this. They ordered their sailors to evade the Unokteran if possible and to not initiate another confrontation. It would be too much of a safety risk. Ships traveling the passage were forced to avoid the waters Rah'Unok was spotted in most frequently. Rah'Unok's revenge contributed to a number of tales about the ocean dragon. For example, some of the remaining religious leaders of the Araimi suggested that these events were caused by the gods taking revenge for the Massuk insulting them and killing their people during the colonization campaign. The Massuk themselves saw it as an opportunity to study the species' behavior so they can safely coexist with them. After all, there haven't been any extensive studies, especially on Unokteran intelligence and learning up to this point. It was acknowledged that the Unokteran was a highly intelligent species, even more so than previously assumed. Following these events, the Massuk government introduced new laws. Hunting Thalassospinus is strictly prohibited under capital punishment. The attempt alone can even result in penalty of death, as it is considered a threat to the Empire's safety. Known as Rah'Unok, the ruler of the waves, the vengeful Unokteran lives to this day. No one can say how long he will continue to live, but for 20 years now, no official attempt has been made to hunt him down. And this decision seems to have positive consequences. Attacks still are reported, but the numbers declined during the past 2 decades. Rah'Unok seems to calm down after all. Maybe he started to realize that not the entire species is his enemy, but to understand what is going on in an Unokteran's mind, it will probably take a lot more time. Rah'Unok was and still is a source of fear, and his usual paths continue to be avoided if possible. But ultimately, cases like this offered a much deeper insight into the nature of his species than in the centuries before.